After all of the family tension that we saw in chapter 37, Judah packs up, moves out, gets married, and becomes the father of 3 of his own children. Now when they grow up, he arranges a wife for his firstborn son. We read verse 6, Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord put him to death. That's the end of his story. We're not even told what he did. The point is clear, I think. God sees all the sin and all the wickedness in our lives. He has the power of life and death. He holds every soul in his hand, and he will call every single one of us to give an account to him for how we have lived. Was not permitted to go on living a long life of wickedness against God. He was called to stand before God, presumably sooner than he would have expected, and that's that. Now, it was the custom of this culture that if a man and woman married and the man died, then one of his relatives should seek to marry the widow. Now, when they have children together, the first child would effectively take on the name of the deceased brother and will receive any inheritance from him, and any other children that this new couple have will be considered to be their own children. Now, what's the point of that? Firstly, it means that widows are looked after, and secondly, it means that the family line carries on. No branch of the family tree should ever need to be cut off. Again, a strange custom to our ears, no doubt. I'm not recommending it. I'm just trying to explain what's going on here in the passage. So the honourable thing for Er's brother Onan is to propose to this widow and then seek to build a family with her. We see in verse 9 that Onan is more than happy to sleep with Tamar, but he has no interest in raising a child with her. How very modern this man is, right? This is a man who's happy to take delight, but he's got no interest in shouldering his duty. This is sex, but with no strings attached. This is selfish and sinful. And so the Lord puts him to death. 2 brothers down, 1 brother left. At this point, Judah, the father, steps in and he says to Tamar, the widow, "Look, my 3rd son's a bit young for marriage, really. Why don't you go back to your father's house, and when he's older, I'll bring him to you, and then you can get married to him." And we read in the same verse, verse 11, that Judah actually has no intention of giving this 3rd son to this woman. Apparently, he's blamed the deaths of the first 2 upon her. Now, many years pass. Judah has obviously not made good on his promise because he never intended to, which means that poor Tamar has been living as a widow all this time, living in hope, waiting while the best years of her life pass her by. She's been horribly lied to and mistreated here. One day she hears that Judah, her father-in-law, is coming near where she lives, and so she devises a plan. Tamar presents herself as though she's a prostitute. She waits by the side of the road, and, sure enough, Judah comes that way and decides that he will sleep with this prostitute. In doing so, he causes this apparent stranger to fall pregnant. Judah can't pay for the prostitute in the moment, so he leaves his seal, his cord, and his staff as a pledge that he will come back and pay her fully when he has his money with him. But he soon finds out when he goes back to pay, the prostitute has apparently vanished into thin air. She's nowhere to be found. Well, 3 months later, Judah hears the news that Tamar, his daughter-in-law, is pregnant. Hang on a minute, she's supposed to be saving herself for marriage to one of my sons, Judah thinks. Clearly she's been sleeping with someone else. She's prostituted herself out, is the claim that is made. Judah says with sickening hypocrisy, "Bring her out and let her be burned to death." You know, sometimes people are self-righteous because they're just covering up for their own sinfulness. That is the case here. Tamar, fortunately, is able to say, "Wait, I'm pregnant by the man who owns these." And then she added, "See if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are." Well, of course, Judah does, doesn't he? Now, something happens to Judah here, and I don't want you to miss it. He is called out on his sin, on his own unrighteousness. It's held up before him, and it's like he actually sees it, perhaps for the first time. In response, he says, "She is more righteous than I, since I would not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not sleep with her again. I think this is a recognition of his own sin. In sleeping with her, yes, but also in the first place, the sin of not keeping his promise. You even see in that little sentence a desire to turn from sin. He doesn't sleep with her again because she is not his wife. Again, conversion stories in the Old Testament are not always clean, but this, I think, is Judah's. I think the beauty of Judah's story is not that he's a man without sin, clearly he's sinful, but that he has turned from sin to God here. And God meets him with amazing grace. From this man Judah, and from this big mistake, comes the greatest blessing the world has ever known. Would you believe the Messiah comes from this awful union? He straightens what was crooked. He blesses those who are broken. He saves those who turn from sin. This chapter shows us that even the sinfulness of man is no match for the amazing, forgiving grace of God.